Crystal and Sheridan are going to pass the hat. It costs us $700 a month to host this meeting, which is a lot. We have to have a bigger venue because we have so many people that show up. So that's a good thing, but you know, we can no longer fit into like a $150, $200 church. We have a $700 beautiful facility. So chip in if you can. If you don't have any cash on you, if you don't want to donate, don't, but if you can, that'd be great. Candidates. We should have local candidates for school board or city council. If anybody wants to come up here and introduce themselves, this is the time to do it, but get up here quickly. So who do we have? I know I saw Bobby was here, Mike's here. Come on up and just line up over here. Oh, quite a few, that's pretty good, okay. Yeah, while they're getting in line, I'll just let you know. Who here has signed up for Constitution Boot Camp on May 23rd? Wow, we have like 80 people signed up, but I'm only seeing like 5 or 6 hands. So you can still sign up for that up until the day of, but scholarships have now been cut off, okay? So it's $30 for an adult, it's $15 you share a book like with a spouse or a family member, and then it's $15 for youth. We have a separate program being held for the youth, that's age 6th grade through 12th grade, and then a separate one for the adults. So it's gonna be really good. I don't think you'll regret going. It's on Saturday the 23rd from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Lunch is included. All the materials are included. You just have to show up, and I think you'll really enjoy it. It's on tarrant.com and click the link, and then you can sign up, but do it right away. Okay? Come on in. Just so you know, I don't even know who all these people are. So that, just because they're introducing themselves, it does not mean they're endorsed, but we give them an opportunity to do that.
I'm Dr. Chris Kittle, and I'm running for school board in Keller. I am running against a 5-time incumbent, and I want to be the voice for the teachers. We are not taking care of our teachers in Keller. We lost lots of teachers last year, and we lost principals last year, and I want to make sure that stops. I want to make sure that the money gets to the classroom and to the campus, and if we want to keep our district to be a strong education, to provide a strong education to our community, then we need to take care of our teachers.
Hello, and so we lowered our tax rate 3 times and did the effective tax rate this year. I'll shut up when she talks.
I don't have anything else now. I'm just teasing.
Get a lot of it.
We are blessed to have such a great leader in Colleyville. That's right. I just want to say thank you. 3 years ago, you guys helped us to get into office where we're at right now. I remember a lot of these places. We used to get to come. This guy put us in so on Mondays and Tuesdays, and you see us check in because we're out there working for you guys. Colleyville knows we got in, we hustled, and we did the things we were going to do, we said we were going to do, and I'm super proud of that. I'm super proud to be a conservative. If you know me, you know I don't mind saying that. I love it going out on the streets and talking about how conservative we are. Again, like the mayor said, we lowered the tax rate 3 times, even though taxing entities went up on the property values, we still dropped ours. And this year we did the effective tax rate. Ask your own mayor if he did the effective tax rate this year. Not many did it. We did it. We are just like you. We're just regular people. We got elected and we said we were going to do the things we were going to do. We did it.
Just make sure everybody knows what that means. Our property values in Colleyville have been going up 8-9%. So this year we lowered the tax rate to completely offset that 8%.
Hello, my name is Michael Coy. I'm running for GCISD. I have my platforms very straightforward. Does CARE teach us more? They need the money, they deserve the money, and they need to have every amount of support that we can give them. Taxes, let's make sure we support the cap on the rate to 2.5% so that we don't just keep on throwing money at the school board. And then term limits on the GCISD school board as well. Thank you very much. That's money.
I'm Sandra Shelton, and I'm a little duck out of the water here. I am running for Fort Worth ISD, Trustee District 6. Pray for me. They do not even know what the word conservative means, but I have been led to do this, so I'm doing it. And I wanted to come out here just to get lifted up and realize there are people who really do understand what conservative means. I think Fort Worth ISD thinks that our tax money is monopoly money. I really do. And I've been going to the board meetings since, I've been going to the board meetings since, and it's amazing. It's an amazing, depressing moment every time they come to the money. So somebody has to have a voice. I have that voice. I will speak that voice. And if I'm elected, you have friends in Southwest Fort Worth. Tell them, District 6, Wedgewood, is the district. We need help, and I can do that. And I've got 2 opponents that will change nothing. Thank you.
All right, make sure you have conversations with these people before you go home tonight. Okay, so it is our 10-year anniversary this year. So every month we're recognizing 2 of our top volunteers throughout those 10 years. So tonight we're honoring 2 people. Molly Maddox, why don't you come on up? Now I'm going to read some stuff about you to embarrass you, okay? Molly Maddox has, can you see him? Come on out here, everybody can see you. Okay. Molly Maddox has been one of our most dedicated volunteers for a number of years. Whenever we need someone to work at a table, help with registration, staff an event, or whatever, Molly has been spending 6 months in Alaska. She has lived her entire life in Texas. She went to college in Canyon, Texas, and has lived in the DFW area since 1977. I was 6. That way. Okay. Molly is a retired. Okay. Molly is a retired teacher in the HEB ISD, where she taught since 1977 and still substitutes there. Molly also works at the Texas A&M Law School and at AT&T Stadium. Molly became involved in politics because she saw so many of her values in government going awry. As a staunch conservative, somehow found Northeast Tarrant Tea Party when we were meeting at the Montessori School. How many of you were at the Montessori School with us? Fantastic. And she has been a devoted member of our group ever since. Molly has been a number of volunteer roles for NATTP since the early days, including currently volunteering at the registration desk at Shark Tank. Did y'all go to Shark Tank? Yeah, okay. Texas Tough events, those are our fundraisers, and other miscellaneous events and programs. Molly has been a dedicated worker in several campaigns for Ted Cruz, both as senator and president, traveling to Iowa and several other areas to help with block walking and phone banking. Molly has also worked for Connie Burton in her campaigns, Jonathan Sticklin and Matt Rinaldi. While she is very active in all of her working life, she volunteers every time she can for solid conservatives. The bottom line, Molly is wherever she's needed, and she is greatly appreciated at Northeast Tarrant Tea Party. All right, Mike McCoy, come on up. I didn't write these, I just wanted you to. Okay. Mike McCoy is Northeast Tarrant Tea Party's executive chef. Whenever we have need of food for a meeting or a special event, Mike comes through with his gourmet menu items that always dazzle the crowds and keep them coming back. Whether it's a special dinner for 12, a barbecue for 300, or just pizza at our regular meetings, Mike is our go-to guy for delicious food, and we appreciate him for that. Mike grew up, I'm learning stuff about you because I didn't know this, Mike grew up in Venezuela, where his father was a chemical and oil guy. His brother still lives there. He got, you were born there?
No, he was.
Oh, he was born there, okay. He got involved in politics when Barack Obama ran for office. That motivated Mike to volunteer with Northeast Tarrant Tea Party and to block walk for candidates most weekends during election seasons. Mike has been a valuable team member with Northeast Tarrant Tea Party, always stepping up to answer whatever call went out. Mike has been married to Yvonne for 25 years.
Say hi, Yvonne. Couldn't do it without you.
Yes, okay. They have 3 children who can also help Mike with the food preparation, serving or cleaning up. Are y'all here? Yep, right there in the back. Faithfully here. We really should be honoring the entire McCoy family for their service to our club. Youngest son, Dustin, is the kind gentleman who takes your money and helps serve you pizza at every meeting. Mike has recently announced a run for Grapevine Colleyville School Board. Yay, that's Mike. He is very concerned about the direction the school is going and wants to bring back common sense to the board. Mike is concerned about the spiritual and political battle that is going on inside our institutions of government and is not so much interested in parties, but in truth. He will be a valuable asset to the GCISD, and we hope you will give him your support. Mike is a true patriot. We are blessed to have him and his family on our side. And that's all that's written here, but it doesn't say anything about you being a real estate agent or you being involved in baseball.
Or builder, right?
Yeah.
Who wrote this thing?
So this is one busy guy, and we appreciate all the time that you give to our club. Thank you so much. Okay, so the next gal we have, where are you? Jenny, start making your way to the stage. So I'm just gonna be honest and tell you who Jenny is, and I think she gave me permission. She might not have known everything I was gonna say, but it's not pretty. So there was this town hall with Jonathan Sticklin, okay? And there was a person that came to that meeting that heckled Jonathan so badly, she was booed by the Democrats even and asked to leave, okay? Since then, she has gotten involved in an issue that you would normally think conservatives are involved with. And she hasn't found any support from the left, and it's kind of opened her eyes to some things. So she reached out to me, and I said, why don't you come talk to our club? And I think I might have surprised her when I offered to let her come talk to us. But I did reserve the right to have the hook and get her off the stage if we need to. But I think your jaw will drop at some of the things she has to say. And I think it's really important that we all hear it and get involved with her. Okay, come on up, Jenny.
All right, this is nerve-wracking for me. I'm not a public speaker. I'm very nervous, but this issue is very important, and it's not getting the attention that it so desperately needs right now. I want to thank Julie. Thank you so much. I've already told Julie. I think she's an angel, but thank you so much for having me and listening to me. And I'm not on the left anymore, by the way. I'm an independent, so people are gonna have to fight for my vote. Okay, so what I am is where I come from, or, kind of my credentials, I guess you would say. I'm part of a nonpartisan coalition called Hands Across the Aisle. We're a large group of women from all over the world and from all over the political spectrum. We are all united in our goal to defeat transgender ideology. I'm gonna explain, do my best. It's trigger warning, by the way, trigger warning. That's very exciting. Okay, there's a lot to say. I first want to say that transgender dysphoria is a serious and agonizing condition. Those who suffer from it deserve the best care and compassion. What's heartbreaking is that these individuals receive anything but. They have been exploited and capitalized on in the worst way. They need compassionate care. What they're getting are parades and exploitation. And then it is known by psychology, though vehemently suppressed and denied by trans activists, that there are two types of trans men: the transsexual homosexual gay men, who, to be brief, basically they want to be loved by men as a woman. It's a mental illness. The second type of trans is the one that is going to be the threat to women and girls' safety, which, by the way, I am a feminist, but I'm not a liberal feminist. A feminist is a woman who believes in female liberation, and we are only liberated if we protect our rights and our safety. Okay, so the second type of mentally ill transgender. Okay, so they're called autogynephilic. From autogynephilia, and the ones that are aware of their condition, they're just people that have a mental illness and they're aware of it. The ones where it becomes a problem is the autogynephilic men who also are narcissistic, so narcissistic that they don't realize that they have a condition. And these are the men that are gonna be, literally rapists are being allowed in women's prisons because they identify as men, they keep their male genitalia intact. So, autogynephilia, to explain it a little better, it's when a man falls in love with the idea of himself as a woman. You may have seen a video that went viral recently that showed a man dressed as a woman freaking out in a video game store because the store clerk called him sir instead of ma'am. He ran around kicking stuff. He was like, "It's ma'am, I'm not a sir, I'm a ma'am." And he just completely lost it. And it was funny to watch, but what people don't understand is the reason why that man had so much rage is because that clerk basically told him that his girlfriend looks like a man. Because he's in love with that image of himself as a woman. Okay, so these autogynephilic narcissists care only about being affirmed. They must be affirmed no matter what, and this is what I believe has led to the birth of trans children. A statistic that is well known in the medical community before political activism took over this area of mental health is that there is an 80 to 90% desistance rate in kids who suffer from gender dysphoria. So if your 4-year-old comes to you and says he's really a girl, there is an overwhelming likelihood that your child will grow up out of this condition and lead a normal life. However, now that the feelings of autogynephilic men have become priority, we can no longer recognize that gender dysphoria almost always desists. Activists have made it so the only treatment recommended for these kids is affirmation only, a treatment where you can only agree with your child, encourage their child to believe their delusion, and tell them that they have indeed been born in the wrong body. There's currently a bill in the Texas House, HB 517, that would remove a parent's right to give their gender dysphoric child any other psychological treatment besides this affirmation-only care. If it passes, it will be illegal to call your gender dysphoric daughter she. And if it becomes as bad as it has become in parts of Canada, doing so would be considered an act of domestic violence. They'll always use the trans people commit suicide. Don't talk bad about trans people. You'll literally kill them. They're going to kill themselves if you're not nicer to them. They kill them. They have a high suicide ideation rate because they are mentally ill.
Exactly.
And we need to be able to say that out loud because they need compassionate care, not a parade. So in affirmation-only care, you immediately affirm your child's delusion that they were born in the wrong body. You dress the opposite sex and buy them toys that are stereotypically meant for the opposite sex. When your child approaches puberty, their doctor will put them on puberty blockers, which prevents their bodies from developing naturally. And then once the period of natural puberty ends, they're given high-dose cross-sex hormones that will very likely sterilize them for life. And no long-term studies have been done on these hormone treatments. But it is known that they do cause organ and bone damage. There's also a lot of girls as young as 13 are having double mastectomies, and boys as young as 17 will have their penis removed and inverted to create a fake vagina. I have met and spoken to a teenage girl who thought she was trans, and so she had her breasts removed, only to realize later that she was not trans, but just extremely uncomfortable with her body due to childhood sexual abuse and trauma. Her doctors did not probe her for any reason why she might be experiencing dysphoria, as current medical standard is only to affirm. She quickly and easily made an appointment for a double mastectomy, and her insurance covered it. Rapid onset gender dysphoria. Oh wait, there's more. Rapid onset gender dysphoria is a teenage social condition. It is a trend. The left has been so successful in turning oppression into a commodity and virtue signaling into a currency that teenagers now feel as though they have to be part of an oppressed class in order to be valuable. Teenagers get on the internet, see all these stories about trans people being stunning and brave, and they also want that attention for being special and rainbows and unicorns. It's a new phenomenon. The surge in teen trans is obvious. It's obvious that this is a new phenomenon. However, studies, reports that exist, they are being silenced by the rabid activists on the left that do not want you to hear the truth. And the media and academia kowtows to these activists, public shaming and losing their jobs over their hateful bigotry. I'm here today because this issue is only getting worse. The LGB made a huge mistake when it included the T, and an even bigger mistake when they allowed for the inclusion of the Q. For all the letters that have been added to the LGBTQ LMNOP, Q is the one that sticks. What does Q mean? Q stands for queer. Queer is a slur and a meaningless word. The left It doesn't mean anything. It's a meaningless word. The left, doesn't have a coherent definition because they refuse to be coherent on this issue. Because if they were coherent, they would understand that it's a global fraud, is what it is. So if you want to feel like a special oppressed class, all you have to do is say, I identify as queer. And then, oh, hugs, you're part of the LGBTQ rainbow. So what qualifies you as queer? Basically anything. I can say I'm attracted to men with beards. That means I'm queer. I identify as queer. If you don't have a beard, I don't find you attractive or not queer. But when you look into the history of queer theory, though, and the origins of queer as an identity, you'll find something very disturbing and I think deliberate. Theory, your erotic orientations are what make you queer. So if you're aroused by trees, the fact that you have that erotic orientation, you find trees attractive, this makes you queer. Which may sound funny to you, but if your erotic orientation is that you're aroused by children, then you are also queer, and now you are a protected class. Local Democrats were pretty mad that I decided to come today. They think that I'm just a hateful bigot that's out hating all the way to the bank, or they probably think that Tim Dunn or somebody paid me to be here. But the truth is that it's their fault I'm here. I tried to have this conversation with them. They shut me down. They called me nasty, mean names. They kicked me out of all their groups. They shunned me. I mean, it's all manipulation because they can't listen to me. If they do, they would find out this is it's so dumb. So it's not my fault that I'm here. And I'll tell you what, I did speak to Mr. Seabrittle, who ran after Mr. Stickland, my new friend, Jonathan Stickland. Steve Riddle, who ran against Jonathan Stickland, I talked to him about this for days and days, and he ignored me, and then he ignored me. Well, he listened, but he basically treated me like I was hysterical and needed a my doll and told me I was imagining things. And he also sent me some messages that were not appropriate for any married man to send to a married woman, so you can bet I won't be supporting Mr. Riddle. He showed a real lack of judgment there when he thought I would put up with that. So, my time's up. I gotta stop. I have so much more, so if anybody wants to talk about this, I've got.
Actually, we are still waiting. Dan's gonna be here any minute, but he's not here yet. So if you want to keep talking, you can keep talking. Or if anybody had questions, we could do that. But if you can find where you were at in your notes, I think we have just a few minutes. I was told 5 minutes about 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, sure. Where? Oh no, they're grooming children just blatantly. They're bringing their propaganda into schools and saying that this is how you treat children lovingly. You teach them that if a boy likes wearing dresses, he's really a girl, let's put him on hormones.
Can you repeat the name of your organization? Where can we connect with you online?
Okay, so it's called Hands Across the Aisle. We're a coalition. We don't have bank accounts. We're just a bunch of concerned women that plan activists. We have a Facebook page, Hands Across the Aisle, and a website, handsacrosstheaisle.com.
I want to validate what this woman is saying. In my family, there's a situation where a young man is decided he's female, and you cannot get to them, you can't get to their psychotherapist, you can't get anywhere but have them understand the pathology of what they're going through. It's all about yes, you must be, and yes, we're doing that. In legislation and all this activism, this stuff is creeping into all the laws. You can't question this, and even if you use their true sex and name, they will shut you down and they'll throw you out and they can throw you in jail.
They in the UK right now, women have been arrested for going on Twitter and saying that men can get thrown in jail. Sorry, I think
Martina Navratilova recently came out with a strong statement about transgender boys competing in girls' sports.
right.
Is that a light maybe at the end of the tunnel that might begin to turn some of this around?
That is the thing that might be their undoing, because these men, these autogynecoid men, they're such narcissists, they don't realize the ridiculous things that they're saying. And so they picked a fight with Martina Navratilova. That was probably a bad idea. So I think that, I mean, no, clearly men should not be able to compete against girls. And what we're gonna see more of is they're gonna keep pushing it. We're gonna see boys taking sports scholarships away from girls and taking titles away from girls. And people are, I mean, hopefully they will put up with it. And I think.
Yeah, are you aware of the case that Jonathan's where husband and wife divorced, and she has twin boys, she has custody of twin boys. One of them she's going to turn into a girl, and the dad can't do anything about it by Texas law. He can't stop it. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that's what I mean, the most insidious thing is that they've taken over all the medical, and they've made these doctors and everybody kowtow to this lie that they have to believe, because they don't want anybody to say you're mentally ill when they're mentally ill. So it's terrifying.
Well, I just want to say, and a lot of people may know it, but that the training starts at pre-K. Never think that it doesn't start at pre-K. There are books that most parents are not involved with their school children. Big mistake. Number one, you're getting socialism from them, but they're being programmed in the books that you know nothing about.
Yeah, there's one in the library, and I had a reading, and Julie was really nice to support me with this reading I had. It's a book called I Am Jazz. There's several books at the Bedford Library that are meant to groom children into this whole transgender sickness. But yeah, basically, there's books in the library, and they're like groups like the Human Rights Campaign are hosting readings at libraries where you get all these kids together and you teach them about things that they can't possibly have concept of. So yes, they are trying very hard to get into your schools and get in there early, and we need to pay attention to this.
Okay, I think we need to wrap it up. Thank you, Jenny. Let's give her another big hand. Okay, so our featured speaker, and the one you've all been waiting to hear tonight, is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick is a bold and determined who consistently articulates the views and values of the conservative majority in Texas. Dan Patrick was first elected Lieutenant Governor of Texas in 2014 and re-elected in 2018. He is committed to reducing taxes, thank you.
Property taxes. Me too.
Limiting government spending, border security, protecting life, the family, the Second Amendment, and education reforms that will assure that every Texan has the opportunity to prosper, and the Lone Star State will continue to lead the nation in job creation and business expansion. Lieutenant Dan, as I like to call him, is a successful small businessman and radio host. He and his wife Jan have been married 43 years, and they have 2 children and 5 beautiful grandchildren. Please welcome Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
So nice. So I walk in the door, and Caleb, who I don't know, just met him tonight. Have you met before? Oh, Boy State, that's right, it's where I spoke, Boy State. And I love his hat, you know, his cap.
Class of 2019, UT Austin bound, UT Austin.
There you go. And he goes to Guyer High School. Is that nearby?
Denton, Texas.
Denton, Texas.
Traveled an hour out to see it.
He traveled an hour here, and he brought me a painting that he did. And so I want to show you this. Pretty cool.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Hadn't made it. It'd been your speaker. So this is all of the things like conservative, principled conservative is kind of an abstract, but tell them about this day in 2020.
We're thinking Dan should run for something in 2020. What do you guys think?
The only thing, if I'm running in 20, is any media here?
Yes.
Okay, I'm thinking about running for president of my homeowners association in 2020. That's about it. So, if you'll take that over there, Caleb, and I'll take it on the car. We came up in a plane tonight, so I put that on the plane. And I think it'll fit in the door. So, that's awesome. So, give you that one. Thank you, Julie. So, you see, there are a lot of young Republicans ready to take over the reins from us when it's time for us to retire and join Jesus. He's ready, okay? He's here. So, and many of them out there. So, thank you for having me. This was a date that Julie has been so kind to work with me, and you have, because I was supposed to be here in November, was it? Or December? And I forget what happened. I think I was under the weather. I couldn't come. And then I was supposed to be here in February. And then a week before the speech, or the appearance, the president said he was going to El Paso. So since I was chair of his campaign and will be again, we went to El Paso with the president. And then tonight, so we are here tonight. To be honest with you, I don't do anything during session. And the reason I don't is I never can predict how long we'll be on the Senate floor. I just day to day, just don't know, or how long a debate will go, and I don't want to make commitments and cancel them. And so during session, this will be the only event I do for a Republican group all session. Thank you. And so we didn't go on the floor until 3 o'clock today, and because that could have been, although I didn't think it would be very long today, so I didn't go to Austin today. I just want to let you know I did some work in Houston. I had some family in from Australia, of all places, and I chartered a plane to be here with you tonight because this is how important you are to me. You were important in my election 4.5 years ago when I ran the first time. You were important this time, and you are the key to 2020. In all seriousness, talking about 2020, we have our work cut out for us. Now, I know the media is here tonight, so I'll be a little bit careful. I don't want to give them all the strategy of session or 2020. This sounds like, can y'all hear me okay? Yeah. Oh, it's fine? Okay, it sounds a little rough here.
Do you want the handheld?
Yeah, you want to give me a hand on it?
Trade for Q&A.
Okay. And testing. Okay. That sounds better to me. And I appreciate you all so much. How many of you were here in 2013 and 14 when we used to meet in that small church? When I was running, we're 4 of us running for lieutenant governor, and I didn't know most of you. I didn't know Julie. We had met probably at some event somewhere. But she, along with your club, came and endorsed me early on in the election. Early on. And took me back to the kitchen. It was a church, wasn't it? Yes. And there was a kitchen in the back. I remember it was like yesterday. And you said, because we're all asking for endorsements. It was Patterson, Staples, Dewhurst, and myself. And I knew that this county was critical to winning the primary. And she said, I've looked at all of your work, I've looked at your votes, I've looked at the other candidates, all good people, but I've looked at everybody. And she said, I'm going to endorse you. And I can't speak for the club, but I think the club will endorse you at some point or be supportive of you. She said, but I'm going to hold you accountable. And you know what? We should be held accountable for what we're doing. When you run for office, you should say what you're going to do and then do what you said you were going to do, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So say what you're going to do what you said you're going to do, because that's what you're supposed to do. Now, we don't hit a home run every time, and we're not right 100%, but I'm proud of what myself have accomplished in the first 2 sessions. They've been the most conservative sessions ever in the history of the state, the most efficient sessions ever. We've gotten our work done. We had 20 priorities in the first session. We passed 19 of the 20. In the second session, we had 30 priorities. We passed all 30, both times in record time. And not all of them made it through the House. So thankful we have a new speaker. Not all of them made it through the House. But a lot did, and maybe they came back as House. Sometimes we do a bill and they do a bill, and a Senate bill becomes a House bill, or a House bill becomes a Senate bill. But, I haven't done the math on them, but I think probably more than half got signed into law. And so I'm really proud of what we've accomplished, but we have more to do. And when I say I'm so glad we have a new speaker, it's nothing negative about the last one. I'm just glad. I'm saying that for the media. They will write that you laughed when I said that. Is Bud Kennedy here? I heard him. Bud here? Hey, I'm gonna say something about Bud. Now, Bud's never been a fan of conservatives, or surely me. Laugh on again. But he wrote an attack piece on me about a month ago, based on wrong information that was written in the Houston Chronicle. And to his credit, the next week, he apologized in writing and said he based it on false information. Hi, Maggie. And I give him credit for that. The Houston Chronicle retracted the story. I give it. That never happens. Sherry Sylvester, who's here, she's my senior advisor and communications expert, she's been doing this for 40 years. She says, only twice have I seen a newspaper retract an article about a Republican. They never have to retract an article about a Democrat because they never write anything bad about a Democrat. So anyway, at least, see, I'm like I like the media to be. You have to say some nice things occasionally. So I'll say that nice that Bud actually retracted the story. So I appreciate it, Bud. So I want to talk about a little bit, because we haven't talked. The whole point of coming up here in November was to talk about the election and what happened. And then to talk about what was coming up. And this is actually works out a better time, because we can talk about the election a little bit, and we're now in about the 60th day of the session. We're more than not quite halfway through, almost halfway through. So we can kind of bring you up to date on that. And then we have some questions that we'll take, and then I have to get back on the plane and get to Austin. So let's talk about what happened, because there's been a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about what happened in November. I know that all of you were surprised, as I was, of the turnout in Denton, not the turnout, but the results in November in Tarrant, Denton, and Collin County.
Yeah.
It wasn't because you didn't work hard. It wasn't because you didn't turn out. In fact, we set a record turnout for Republican voters in the history of the state. I actually got 1.5 million more votes in November this time than I got 4 years ago. And Greg Abbott got about 1.8 million more. So let me just give you just a quick snapshot so you put this all in perspective. Normally in a primary, not a primary, normally in a gubernatorial year, because gubernatorial, presidential, you look at history, the off-year elections, we call the gubernatorial elections, are half of the turnout of a presidential election. Because in a presidential election, just everybody votes, not everybody, still it's only about 50% of registered voters voted, even in a presidential year. But people vote who never think about voting. They don't come to an organization like this. They just, hey, it's president, and they're going to vote. So in 2014, when Abbott and I ran the first time, the total was 4.7 million voters cast a vote. I'm sorry, 4.5 million. 4.5. It was 2.7 million Republicans and 1.8 million Democrats. So 4.5, okay? 2016 presidential. So what should happen? Double it. And 8.9 million people voted. Almost exactly 2.9 million people. Just like history. So now we get to 2018, last November. So what would be expected? To drop back down to about 4.5. Plus, and since we increase our turnout every election because of population, the guesstimate was, well, maybe we'll break 5 million. Do you all know how many people voted in November? 8.4 million. Presidential level turnout. So we went from 2.7 million Republicans voting for our candidates, Ted Cruz, Greg Abbott, myself, go down the list. So we went from 2.7 to over 4 million. And they went from 1.8 to almost 4 million. So I had a lot of people that talked to me after the election, and people, it's not their living to follow what happens in politics on a day-to-day basis. And so they said, well, Dan, I guess the Republicans didn't turn out. I said, turn out? We turned out everybody we could find who was an R. To give you an example, you know what a 4R is, because all of you are 4Rs. You voted in 4 of the last Republican primaries. If you're a 3R, 3 out of 4, 2R, 2 out of 4. And the Democrats, 4 Rs are people who vote in a Republican Democrat primary for the last 4 years, so on. We turned out, and I don't remember the exact number if the media's here, they'll say, well, Dan was off 5%, but I'm close. About 95% of all 4Rs. About 90% plus of all 3Rs. And so did they. So this was a fierce turnout. And when you consider that Beto O'Rourke was the shiny new object, he was. I mean, Ted Cruz had run before, Greg Abbott had run before, I had run before. I mean, we didn't have like a new person on the ticket. They had the shiny new object, who also had $80 million, more money than anyone running for the U.S. Senate in the history of the country, by far. And he got another 20 or 30 million in free earned media. I mean, he's on Oprah, he's on this, he's on that, it's all free media. Ted had 30 million. That would normally be a lot. But the reason you saw those Beto signs, and I know you said, where are the Ted signs? Beto spent about $5 million in signs. Ted didn't have the money. Later, he eventually, put out, and you all bought some signs, and he put out some signs, but Beto put out all those signs, created this name idea, and this idea that, wow, what happened to Ted? I don't see any Ted signs. So it was smart on their part, quite frankly. Beto is as lightweight as you can be. He stands for nothing. He's an absolute danger to the future of the United States and the future of Texas. But we have to recognize our opponent's strengths, and he worked hard. I mean, he worked hard, and he was able to raise a lot of money. And so he drove the Democrat vote. Okay, clear. What drove our vote? Again, Ted didn't have 30 million, didn't have 80 million, and he was in Washington most of the time, including a month up before the election on those hearings for Kavanaugh. Abbott and I worked hard. I spent millions of dollars. Abbott spent millions of dollars, not only in our own races, but helping other candidates. I was the first lieutenant governor in history to spend millions of dollars helping other senators. It usually doesn't happen. I spent millions of dollars to help senators in the primary and the general. So what happened? They all turned out for Beto. Had no clue what he stood for, but they turned out for him. Our voters instinctively understood something is wrong here, and that we're going to show up. And so 2.7 million people 4 years ago to over 4 million people. And because of that, because of you, because of Republicans across the state who said, you know what? We're going to fight for Texas. We're going to fight for our pro-life values, our Second Amendment values, for fiscal responsibility. This is who we are. We're not going to let some guy named Beto party reverse everything that we've accomplished in the last 15 years, which is as long as the Republicans have run the state. Remember, the Republicans have only been in charge of the state, governor, Senate, House, since 2003. So instinctively, if you had told me, and I will, if the media wants to quote me on this, then quote me on this. I've said this a lot. If you had told me in September, remember thinking that 5 million people, or maybe 5.5, or maybe 6 at the max would vote, that 8.4 million people were voting, I would have said, it's going to be a long election night. So, it was a long election night for some races. I mean, there's nobody more conservative than I know of than John Stigler. And there's not another county that I know more conservative in the United States than Tarrant County. Now, Montgomery County's doing a pretty good job down in the Houston end, and Collin County and Denton County very conservative. But I mean, you all are kind of looked at the leader. And when I saw those election returns come in, I said, what's happening? And so once we were able to do the analysis of the vote, that's what happened. They just did a major job of getting their vote out. they increased their vote was not through Democrats, by the way. There were about 1 million more Republicans who voted in primaries than Democrats. Remember I told you 4 years ago it was 2.7 to 1.8, we won by about 1 million? Because that's the history of primary voting. We just turn out more, because we don't register by R or D in the state, you just register to vote. But we base those numbers on who turned out for the primary. Well, we still beat them by about 1 million votes in November, R's to D's. But they attracted a whole new world of voters from their early 20s to about 40. These were not necessarily newly registered voters. People think, well, they registered all these new voters. We normally increase voter registration about 7 or 8% each election. It was up 10%, so it wasn't high. These are people registered to vote who had never voted. And I tell people this, and they say, what do you mean they never voted? We have 15 million registered voters in the state. Still, only 8.4 turned out. So 8 million didn't vote even. So a lot of people, they register when they get old enough. They register when they come out of the military. They register because someone registered at church or wherever it didn't work. But they don't vote. So there was this new wave of people in their 20s and 30s who turned out and they voted for the guy who promised that we'd all get along and never said anything. You know, a guy who thinks, you know, it's good to campaign by brushing your teeth on videotape or whatever he did. Did he go to the dentist? Is that what he did? Yeah. You know, if I go to the dentist, you know, you like me, you appreciate my truck, you like the dog, which wasn't my dog, by the way, the truck is mine. The dog just showed up and we kept him in the commercial. That's a true story. Rose, the dog. Rose, we did about 10 takes. But you know what was great about the dog? If you remember that commercial, every time we had about 10 takes to get it right. Every time I would speak, he'd look up. It's because even a dog knows conservative Republicans are the way you want to go in Texas. You realize, think about this. You spent $30 million in TV ad, Beto did. Did you ever see a dog? Dog would have been asleep. Dog's got nothing for me. I mean, Beto's got nothing for me. You know, I'm just going to lay here and fall asleep. So, where was I? But they voted for a guy who stood for nothing. So, I want you to be reassured of one thing. Do not be down about what happened in November. I'm disappointed we lost 12 House seats. I'm disappointed we just about winning Texas for the Democrats to take the White House. It's about winning the Texas House. So it is important to us as we work towards 2020 not to lose the House, not to lose the U.S. Senate seat, and surely not to lose the White House. Because, as we've said many times, if we lose Texas to the Democrats, we never elect a Republican to the White House again because of electoral votes of New York, California, and Texas. There is no math. It's tough enough to string it all together, but there is no math that can allow us to win. So I know the president is focused on this. He'll be spending, I'm sure, more money and more time than he might normally. I know John Cornyn and Ted Cruz and I have already endorsed him. We'll be all in to help John, and he has the fire in his belly to run. And when Dennis Bonnen became the new speaker, I called him up and I said, Dennis, and I've worked with Dennis. I can't say I'm doing really well, but, you know, we work. I said, Dennis, my number one goal this session is to help you get reelected as speaker. We have to have a successful session because we have to hold the House. I don't want to be working with a Democrat speaker. I mean, I know sometimes we, Republicans, drive you crazy. The best, you know, they're still, well, I don't like that bill. I don't like what you, let me tell you what. You want to be crazy? Have a liberal Democrat as the next speaker. And they block everything that Greg Abbott and I and the conservatives try to do. So it's all on the line. And of course, if we lose Texas, then the nation is in dire straits. So we need to expand our base. The Republicans, at the end of the day, I believe will be there. I think we'll increase the numbers, but we're going to have to register more voters, and we're going to have to attract those 20 to 40-year-olds who voted last time for Beto and convince some of them to come our way. the educators, the business community that's been voting. I don't understand it. We have the best business environment in the country, in the world, 10th largest economy, larger than Russia, 48 Fortune 500 companies based in this state, second in the country, 1,000 people a day moving here. Companies moving here, our lowest unemployment rate. I mean, it can't get better than what's going on in Texas, except for property taxes. I'll get to that in a minute. So we've got to convince those people that our conservative fiscal and social policies are the direction for our state to go. And we're going to have to work to do that. And I'm not on the ballot, but I'm pledged to do that because everything is on the line in 2020. Julie will email this out to you tomorrow or whenever she can. But Friday, we released a list of our top 30 priorities for this year. Some of you probably got our email. If you're not on our email list, sign up so you have them. How many of you are on our email list? Let me see. Fantastic. Okay, the rest of you need to sign up because we send out a Sunday night email or weekly email, what's going on. So let me just read you quickly and I'll just go through a few of them and then we'll kind of wrap up, take some questions. So in order. Number one, of course, is always the state budget. Jane Nelson has written a great conservative budget, and we'll have to compromise and work with the House, but that's number one. Number two. So number two is my top priority. And these priorities, by the way, are not Dan's priorities. Some are, like number two. They are bills that you say you want us to address, and they are bills that senators say their constituents want to address. So it's a compilation of party platform, what the grassroots ask us to address, what the senators ask us to address. That's what the top 30 are. And so I wait this time to the filing deadline to put this out because I wanted to kind of gather the information and pick out. Now look, we're going to pass a lot of bills. Last session we passed 1,600 bills. And there are going to be a lot of important bills. So don't, well, my bill didn't get high numbers. That issue may be very important, but these are the 30 that send a message of where we want to go. So number two is property tax reform. Now the bill that we passed out of committee, and it's the Governor Abbott plan, which I support, which is very similar to the plan we passed out of the Senate last session, is to limit local government entities to raising their revenues to 2.5%. Right now, y'all like that? Right now, for those of you who don't know, they can raise it 8%, plus new growth. And by the way, the county judge up here, when he goes up and talks about property taxes, give me a break, okay? I mean, it's ridiculous. Has he switched parties yet? Is he still in the Republican Party? I mean, I've never seen a Republican attack so many Republicans and be so wrong about most of what he says. So 2.5% plus new growth is what the bill is on the table. The House had a hearing, they haven't voted out yet. I don't know where we'll end up, quite frankly. It surely can't be higher than 4, because if you go over 4, there's not much tax relief. It's got to be somewhere between 2.5 and 4. The governor and I like 2.5. But that will greatly reduce your property taxes moving forward, because right now, if they're growing at 7, 8, or 9, or 10% a year, they double in 8 or 9 years. If they're only growing at 2.5 or 3.5 or 4%, whatever number we land in, that the House will agree to, then it's 15 or 18 or 20 years before they double. So it slows the growth, number one. We have to close the back door of growth to property taxes, and this is for businesses and homeowners. Senate Bill number 5, I'm going to come back to 3 and 4 in a second. Senate Bill number 5, we filed Friday. That would increase the homestead exemption from $25,000 to $35,000. That's a bill by Senator Betancourt. We did that in my first session of 15. We increased for the first time in, I think, 20 years, the homestead exemption from $15,000 to $25,000. My goal is I'd like to double it to 50 in the next couple of years, and then I'd actually like to get the homestead exemption all the way up to about $75,000. The average home is a $212,000 home. Some of you may live in one less, some of you may live in one more, but that's a significant tax cut if we can continue to raise the exemption to take that off the books from being taxed. So those are our two property tax bills. Senate Bill 3, across the board pay raise for teachers. Now some people have said, well, Dan, why do you want to support that? Well, it's very simple. We haven't given the teachers, do we have any teachers in here? Any school teachers? Okay, we haven't given school teachers across the board raise in 20 years. And I believe in incentive pay and I believe in merit pay, and that's all good. But I want to raise the base level of our teachers, because we're asking, we all say we need the best and brightest to be teachers. But if we're paying them less money than a college graduate can make in the corporate sector, they're not taking teaching jobs. And if they're there and they're only getting a small raise every year, and 5 years later, they're not making much more than they started for, they don't stay in the profession. 40,000 teachers. We need to retain our good teachers. We need to attract more college graduates to become teachers. I asked, when I was education chair in 2013, we're having a hearing. I think I'm going, am I going along? Are we good on time? Okay. I asked the question, why aren't we getting more young people to go into teaching? And whoever was testifying said, Mr. Chairman, back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s, guess what? Women who graduated from college didn't have any other opportunities. They could become teachers or nurses or secretaries. They weren't allowed to corporate. My wife taught for, I don't know how many years total, 15, 20 years, whatever it was. She's a really smart person, smarter than me. All men say your wives are smarter than you. Is that an amen? Men. Right. She really is. But when she got in, and I won't tell you what year she graduated because she'd kick me in the shin if she were here, but she graduated in that era. She didn't have any other opportunities. Now, I think it's great that women have every opportunity to do today, but here's my point. The corporate sector, if you're a top-notch woman coming out of university, they're coming to grab you. Before, they weren't. So, and most of our teachers are still majority women, but many men in the profession. So part of that is to raise the level up to attract the best and the brightest, because we have to replace these teachers as they retire. Next is going back to Rick Perry. This idea of just throwing billions and billions and billions of education and not pinpointing it to the classroom. And so that's what our aim in the Senate, that's why the bill passed 31-0, because I want to send the money directly, as much as I can, to the teachers. Because next to the parent, the most important person in that child's education is a teacher. I don't care how many programs you develop. Like we're going to spend money in third grade reading this time, because if you're not reading by the third grade level, then you're probably going to drop out in the 9th or 10th. But if I don't have a good teacher teaching that student how to read, whatever instructions they have don't help much. So we're going to spend more money on education this session, without question. Not only do Republicans want it, not only independents want it, some of those people who voted from 22 to 40 for Beto. I mean, the top 3 issues, when we poll, Abbott and I poll across the state, we spend a lot of money in polling, just to get, we're not poll driven, but we like to know what people are thinking. Number 1, property tax. That's the number 1 thing this session. I won't speak for the governor, except I will speak for the governor, because I know he would agree. The number 1 issue for Greg Abbott and myself, reduce property taxes. However that takes shape. Number 2 is school finance and teacher pay, to try to get away from Robin Hood a little bit, and as much as we can put money in focused programs like reading, third grade reading, and other programs, and teacher pay. So I've gone through our top 5 bills. I want to tell you about another bill that's not in the top 30, but obviously it's a high priority. We filed it the last minute Friday, because we've been working on it. You haven't read much about it, because the media didn't notice it. It's 2441. 2441. Something that you all have been asking us to do for a long time, and that is do a sales tax swap for property tax and increase the sales tax. And I don't know if it'll be a half a cent or a cent, and take all of that money and put it to reducing your school taxes, so that everyone in the state is paying their share, on top of increasing the homestead exemption, on top of slowing down the growth. And I don't know that it will pass. It's time to be bold and do these things. 1 penny of sales tax brings in $5 billion a year. So in a 2-year budget, $10 billion, we can do some damage and reduce, I don't know the exact number, and depending where it is, to reduce your school property taxes. And the sales tax will keep growing with our population. You know, I want tourists to help pay for our education. I want everybody to spend money to help pay for our education instead of just homeowners. So, and apartment owners, if you live, you're paying it too through your rent, because that's more than 50% of the expense of any person who owns an apartment. All right, let me go through these other bills kind of quickly. Senate Bill 6 7, and 8 are our disaster response to Hurricane Harvey. And part of that is a statewide flood plan because it wasn't just the coastal areas that flooded. We have earthen dams all over the state that are in bad repair. So it's a master flood plan. It's another plan to draw down matching money. President Trump treated us very well on matching money. For every 10% we put up, they're sending us 90% to help rebuild from the hurricane. Number 9, election security, including having a paper ballot. And we're willing to step up and pay the money to help, those counties that don't have them, because there's a certain type of machine, it's gonna cost some money. And hopefully we get it all phased in by 2020, if not by the next election cycle, but we need paper ballots. Number 10 was targeting student mental health, which Jane Nelson passed out 31-0 last week or 2 weeks ago. Number 11, school safety by Larry Taylor. I went to the school the morning of the shooting. I was there an hour afterwards, and I recognized a couple of things. Number 1, many of those students who were killed were in a classroom that didn't have one of those doors that they could open, push bar. They were in a door that had a key lock and the door was locked. And I said, never again are we going to have students locked in a room that they can't get out. What could be a fire? Could be anything. And so we're going to replace those doors on the older schools that have those. And my wife and I, when we met with the parents from Santa Fe, the number 1 issue, they said they wanted metal detectors. Now, every parent doesn't want it, every school doesn't want it. We're making the school optional, like we do with teachers carrying a weapon. If they want their teachers to carry a weapon, it's up to the school board and the parents to decide. But we're going to, for anyone who wants a metal detector, we're going to provide a matching grant program for that. Jan and I bought 10 metal detectors. Santa Fe needed 20. We bought 10 and donated them. And the company, Garrett in Dallas, donated 10 because I wanted to set that school up as a model just for other schools to copy. If you want them, great. If you don't want them, but we need to secure our schools. The infrastructure. Number 12, Retired Teacher Security Act. Like many pension systems across the country and in Texas, it's not actuarial sound. It's a conservative thing to make it actuarial sound. And that's what we're going to do, to put some money to make sure that that pension is paid for. And the next we'll work on ERS or state employees, because we're not going to be like these other states and like Democrat-run pension systems. They're out of whack, and who knows who's going to pay for it down the road. Number 13, ethics reform that we passed last time out of the Senate. It didn't make it to the governor's desk. Hopefully it will this time. Number 14, expand rural broadband. We're used to getting on our internet when we get it home, but if you live in much of rural Texas, you don't have internet. And guess what? There's a lot of online learning for students. And so we want to expand that. It's not very costly to do it. Number 15, protecting local free markets, like Austin telling companies that they have to give free sick leave or whatever it is. Governments don't need to tell local businesses how to run their business. They need to stay out of it. Senate Bill 16 is the police college loan forgiveness. This is one of my ideas. I met with the Dallas Police Department, and since the shooting there, when they lost 5 officers, they're down about 20% of their officers. They've gone from about 3,500 to 2,900 officers. And all over the state, we're having difficulty attracting people in law enforcement for many reasons. So a few years ago, when I knew we didn't have enough math and science teachers, I created a program for math and science teachers. So by the way, this applies to any of your kids or grandkids. If you go to college and you become a math and science teacher for 8 years, we'll pay for your full education up to $25,000. So in the 5th year, we retire 25% of the debt. The 6th year, 25. So if you teach 8 years, we're going to do that with law enforcement, because what law enforcement told me in Dallas and all over the state, we want college graduates to become our police officers. So if someone will go into law enforcement and commit to 8 years, again, they'll take out the loan and we'll repay it on their 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. It's a very cost-effective way for us to get math teachers, science teachers, and police officers, because we got a lot of them around here tonight, and give all of them a hand right now, because they're the only one that I know the job description says when they get up in the morning, they put that gun and badge on, that if they must give their life for a total stranger, they will do it. And so, we need to attract people to law enforcement. Number 17, protecting religious liberties. We don't want the government to tell the cake baker who he has to make a cake for, okay? That's a Charles Perry bill. Number 18, protecting campus free speech. I want conservatives to have a right to speak anywhere they want to. Number 19, protecting Second Amendment rights. We have too many businesses telling you where you can't take your weapon. Number 20, stopping human trafficking, which is the greatest tragedy of our time. I can't tell you classified information I know, but I can tell you that I know this. There are too many young children, boys and girls, mostly girls, being brought across this border and sent to homes where they are compelled to have sex 20 and 30 times a day. And they can't escape. Stand up for that. Stand up for these poor innocent kids who are being, a lot of these people that cross and say, this is my family. No. I mean, most cases it is, but a lot of cases where that man and those kids, the kids say that's their dad because they were told if they don't say that, they're a real family. In fact, wherever they're from, will be in trouble. Joan Huffman is carrying that bill. Number 21, I don't know what you think about this, but all the doctors tell me, everyone I've talked to, that if you want to address cancer, we need to raise the smoking age to 21 from 18. We passed out of the Senate last session. It did not get through the House. I've looked at all the cost benefit to the state. I've looked at the health benefits to the state, and they believe if they can stop teenagers from smoking for 3 more years, there'll be less smokers. And some of you in this room are smokers, so you're all over 21, so you won't be affected by this bill, I pretty much think. Number 22, 23 and 24 are all pro-life bills. Defund every dollar to abortion providers. We have defunded most of it, but we want to get every dollar of it. Number 23, the Texas Born Aligned Infant Protection Act. We're not going to let happen in Texas what the governors in New York and Virginia support, and that is taking the life of a baby that's born. Number 24, the Alternatives to Abortion Information Act. I passed the sonogram bill back in 11. We have saved roughly 15,000 babies per year from being aborted. We were at a high of 80,000 for our state. We're now down into some years in the 50s or 60s. And part of that bill said that every abortion doctor must hand the woman an information book about abortion and life. Well, are we surprised that Planned Parenthood's not having their doctor do that? So we're going to put some teeth into that bill because we thought they would do it. But we're now going to be sure they do it. Number 24, number 25, higher education credit transfer, just to make the cost of higher education less expensive, to be sure that all universities have to take the transfer of credits that students get in community college, because sometimes kids go to community college and the four-year university they transfer to won't take the credit. So that bill will address that issue. Number 26, honoring our state park commitment. You all voted years ago for sales tax on sporting goods equipment to fund our state parks. Well, until I got there in 15, that money is being spent on everything else but the state parks. So in 15, I directed all of it to go to state parks, and we did. Last session, about 80% of it went to state parks. This will put in the Constitution that all that money has to go to what it's intended for. If we're going to ask you to pay a tax on something for something, then we better take your money and pay it what we said we were going to do it. So this will be all the money to go to our state parks, which millions and millions and millions of Texans visit every year. So we just need to keep our word with you all. Number 27, thank you. Stop government overreach. This frivolous lawsuits. And even in Texas, sometimes an agency, you get crosswise from an agency, they come out and sue you. Well, we're going to say, if you're a Texas agency and you're going to sue somebody, and you lose Texas agency, you're going to pay for it. So we just need to get government out of suing citizens. The next one, I know it was a big one to you, Senate Bill 29, stop taxpayer-funded lobbying. And I'm going to go back to that in a second. And then number 30 is taxpayers' rights to know in bond elections. You go into a bond election, you don't even know what you're voting for. We want everything spelled out, exactly where your money is going. And we want to give you the option to pick A, B, C, or D. It's kind of like you say, okay, I'm willing to vote for that bond, but I don't want to build a new football stadium. It's either all or nothing. We want to give you a chance to vote on individual things. That's a Brian Burke. On 29, let me just go back to this taxpayer-funded lobbying, give you a great example. So we had the hearing on the property tax bill about a month ago. And it was a 13-hour hearing. I put together a committee just for property taxes. Paul Betancourt, Brandon Creighton, Kelly Hancock, I can't remember. Oh, Angela Paxton. And we had 13 hours of witnesses. Every citizen who owned a home or owned a business came in and testified in favor of our property tax, taking it from 8% to 2.5%. And let me say that, 98% of every mayor, county judge, city councilman, county commissioner, or city manager came in and testified against it.
I did not.
Okay, I said 98. Didn't I say 98? And since you did not stand up, because I don't know you by face, your name?
I'm Bobby Lindenwood, Mayor Pro Tem of the great city of Colleyville.
Okay. Okay.
Mayor of Colleyville, the only mayor in Northeast Tarrant County that was the bill.
And
George Dodson, City Council.
elect all of them forever, all right?
We've been term limits in ourselves.
I love these guys. When I'm going, let them run for lieutenant governor. You know, that's why I said 98, because we had some brave souls that came in there. You know, your brethren. And it was shocking to me. Shocking to me.
Some are here.
Some are here. Would you all like to stand up? Look, here's the deal on this. I understand the mayors, the city council, the commissioners, the county judges have a really tough job. The same job that we have. It's dealing with, in our case, education is 52% of our budget, healthcare is 31%, public safety is 11%. 94% of our budget, 3 items. They have police, fire, they have other issues, it's mostly their article. We had a guy come in from Dallas and said, if you limit us to 2.5 plus the growth, I'm gonna have to fire 358 police officers. And we said, we're not cutting your budget. We're just telling you, so you've already funded them. Why do you have to fire them? You got the money for that. You can go 2.5%, new growth up there is about 2.5%, so you go 5%. And by the way, here's the key for Senate Bill 2. If any mayor or county judge believes they need more, they come to you and you get a right to vote. All right? Give the people the vote. Pardon?
That's local control.
That's local control. I like these people more and more. So that's the big part, because right now you can't vote. Well, you can, but no, because you can only vote if it's over 8%, and then you have to get a petition signed. It's never happened. So we want to give you the right. If they come saying we need a little bit more of that. And here's the reason that we're on that number. Because in the 12 years I've been in the Texas Senate, we've never increased our budget more than population inflation, 3 or 4%. Last session, we didn't have any money. So our budget went up 0.2%, in other words, it was flat. So if we can do that, if Greg Abbott and I propose spending 8 or 9% increase in our budget every year, you would deservedly fire us. And your senators and your House members. Now this year we're going to be a little more than 4 because of the hurricane recovery. But if you average over the last 10 years, we're about 3%. And we don't get a chance to get more money, by the way, by saying, citizens, you want to vote for more. You can do that at the local level. So we're not asking them to do anything we're not doing. We cannot sustain 7, 8, 9% increase in your property tax. We just can't do it. It will be the killer to our economy. So look, I've covered a lot of territory. I can see a few of you are dozing off. No, not at all, but I'm out of time. Thank you for the water. We have some questions. So you're going to read the questions? Okay, you read the question. Let me get a drink here. Is this working?
I'm assuming this one does. Okay, so you guys wrote books on these pieces of paper, and we don't have time for that. So basically, this question is asking about SB4 from last session. I believe that was sanctuary cities. Okay. Why, after passing SB4 into law, do all the illegals remain in Texas and our lawmakers still hail it as some kind of victory?
Unplug here. You think so, we're a guy working radio, he would pull the microphone apart. First of all, we're the only state in the country that has banned sanctuary cities. And our cities are not welcoming people here illegally anymore. However, we're not the federal government. And we're going to spend another $800 million on the border this year to do everything we can to help Border Patrol, keep people out of our state. But it's sad to tell you, we're going to probably set a record this year for people crossing the border illegally.
States used to deport people, 1930.
Okay. So, I don't know who that is, but thank you. We need to build the wall, period. Donald Trump is right. I've done so many shows on Fox. This is a real crisis. This is not a immigration manufactured crisis. The Democrats are perpetrating for them to sit there and to say, we don't have a crisis on the border when thousands of people are crossing every month, when those young girls we talked about are being raped in rape houses on the border, and in Dallas, and in Houston, Fort Worth, and San Antonio. Citizens are being killed at the hands of people here illegally, when drugs are pouring into our country, only giving more energy to the opioid crisis, and the heroin, and the cocaine, when the taxpayers of this country and this state are on the hook for billions of dollars for people that should not be in this country. It's a real crisis. So we're doing everything we can in Texas, and we thank goodness we banned sanctuary cities to at least not be a magnet for some of the people that can let them move on through to another state. But we have to have the fence, and the president was right to call this an emergency and declare an emergency, and I hope it's upheld in the courts. But as I told him in McAllen, you may have read the story, Mr. President, if the courts stop you and the Democrats won't help you and some of the Republicans won't help you, then just send the money to us and we'll. And everybody thought, can I tell you, how am I on time? Am I like, we're already out. Okay, real quick story. So the president is very kind if you meet him on the tarmac, which is usually the governor, myself, and the attorney general, or 2 or 3 of us, to invite you to ride in the limousine with him wherever he's going. Most presidents don't do that. You have a follow car, you're in the motorcade. So he always says, Ken or Dan or Greg, hey, why don't you guys jump in the car? Because he loves to talk to you about what's going on. Because once he gets to the event, he doesn't have time to talk to you. I mean, we have phone calls and that, but I mean, we don't have that much time to visit. So in McAllen, we get in the SUV, Cornyn, Cruz, myself, and Paxton with the president. And the president's sitting in this seat, and I'm sitting in this seat. By the way, it's usually the limousine, but this was the SUV they had. And I said, Mr. President, they had invited me to the White House the night of the speech to, I don't want to say work on the speech, that would be unfair, but to go out and meet with the team to kind of brief them on border things that might be in the speech. So we flew up that day with bad weather, but we got there in the afternoon and we met with Jared Kushner all day to work on, they're working finishing the speech. So I given Kushner this idea. So we get in the car 2 days later. And I said, Mr. President, did Jared tell you about my idea? And he said, what was the idea? I said, well, Mr. President, we've spent billions of dollars in Texas on border security, which we shouldn't have to under the Obama administration. And if we sent you a bill and asked you to reimburse us, we can prove up all these charges, like for $4 billion. And you send that money to us, and we'll build the wall. So, he says, I like that idea. So we go to the event, and it's all law enforcement down McAllen, and some crime, families of victims of crime, from people coming here illegally. And we're all sitting around the table, and at the end, there was about 15 of us that were, we each had like 3 minutes to say something to the president. And so at the end, I had my 3 minutes, and at the end, he says, and by the way, I like what Dan said. He said Texas could build a wall. Well, I hadn't had a chance to talk to Greg Gattner about that. I quickly dialed the governor. I said, Governor, I didn't know he was going to announce it to everybody. I was telling him, So, anyway, look, it's a real crisis. And what this country needs to do is have legal immigration reform where we allow the people in here that we want to allow. People would rather pay $2,000 or $3,000 to the United States of America to come here legally instead of paying the drug cartels and not live in the shadows. And as an American, proud to be an American, not sneaking in the middle of the night. Most of these people, they're not the criminals, but we cannot educate, medicate, and incarcerate the whole gosh dang world. We can't do it. Do you know today, we have 5.4 million kids in public school and almost 20% don't speak English or are not proficient. And do you know how much money that costs you as taxpayers? More? And do you know how much difficult that is for our teachers? So, time for one more question, you tell me.
Yeah, I want to do just one more because I know that there's an organization that brought about 20, 25 people here today.
Yes, okay.
And their question is on the monuments, so you
Yes.
and I kind of. Okay, so this is it. It says, this is urgent. Many monuments will be removed if no legislation is passed. Will you support legislation that protects all historical monuments in any Texas city or county this session?
Well, here's the deal. So, Abbott and I made it very clear, we're not taking down any monuments at the Capitol. Not happening. The plaque that was removed, Jeff Leach, who you all, I think many of you know him, can't be much more conservative. He serves on the preservation board with the speaker, the governor, myself. And even the group that put up the plaque years ago said, it is misleading. The information is wrong. They did not oppose it. And so the governor and the speaker, myself, moved on Jeff Leach's motion, and we took it down. And I stand behind the decision on that plaque, especially when the group said, we don't oppose you taking it down, we got it. But we made it very clear, the governor and I and the speaker, we're not removing any monuments at all from the Capitol grounds. Now, when it gets into the cities, there's an issue with that. We want to stop them. I don't like what they're doing in the middle of the night. It's kind of stopped, quite frankly. It's kind of slowed down. If we need, I know, not Dallas. If we need to pass legislation, I would absolutely support that legislation. I have no question. And I want to speak for the other two leaders. I have to look at the constitutionality of that and what we can do with the cities. I don't know, but I can assure you that we have to look. If they're, this whole Obama tour, when Obama went and apologized for America has made mistakes in our history. But you don't erase history. You learn from history. That we're going around and trying because some group says this monument offends me. I understand and I respect if they say that, but we don't tear down our history. Where do we stop? And so Dallas is still on, they got a very liberal mayor and they're still on the wrong direction, but most of them have backed off a little bit as the public has made their voice heard. But if we have to address it with legislation, then we'll talk with our lawyers, and at this point, I don't think we thought we could do it or had to do it, but if we can do it and need to do it, we will do it.
Alabama. What about the Alabama?
Yeah. The retired U.S. veteran against, what does that say, removal of our veteran memorial monuments. Absolutely. I'm with you, 100%.
There is no protection in the Texas cemetery laws. We can just get them enforced.
Say that again, ma'am.
Please enforce the Texas cemetery laws. There are some provisions that will give us some relief if that memorial, like the one in Dallas, is in a cemetery.
Okay. Well, is that the one they're now taking down? Okay. All right, before we break out into song here, I will look at that first thing in the morning. I'll look at that first thing in the morning. Yes, ma'am. You bet. Thank you all have been terrific. I know I talked long, but it took me 3 different times to get here, so I figured I'd give your money for it. I gotta catch a plane and get back, otherwise I'd stay and take photographs and whatever you'd like to do, but I gotta get back to the Capitol, and,
We do have something we want to give you.
okay, let me tell you this, let me share this with you. I think, that we're gonna have the best session we've ever had. If you look at that 30 bills, probably 24, 25 of them are either in the platform or something you've all asked to do and get done for a long time. I think we're gonna pass, all of them in some form, or 28 or 29 of them. I can never say 100%, but I feel pretty good about passing, most or all of them. And I think the House will be pretty responsive. We're gonna have to come together on the property tax issue. We're gonna have to come together on the teacher pay and the school finance. But Governor Abbott and I, at least I've said this, again, I'll speak for the governor. If I have to stay there at Christmas to get this property thing done, that's fine. We shouldn't have to stay there. But we can't leave until we address that. And if we want to win in 2020, we need to pass those issues on this sheet that our conservative Republicans care about. And we need to focus on issues that some of the independent voters and some of the new voters, I don't even call them Democrats yet because I only voted one time, we should get into our party. And that's what we're focused on. And I feel good about where we are. I said something at the very beginning about the former speaker. I wasn't trying to, when he said he wasn't coming back, I wished him well in his retirement. It could have come sooner, but I appreciate his service. But at least I have a speaker now that the governor I can communicate with. We have someone who's more conservative, working with the House now. We're light years from where we've ever been. And just the fact that the governor and I and Dennis, we're not going to agree on everything. And before it's over, we'll probably have some strong disagreements, but we're not going to be disagreeable. And it needs to be behind closed doors when we disagree. What happened in the last few sessions of all this infighting was not productive. And so I feel very good about where we're going. We have a clear vision of where we're going. And when this is all over, we're all going to have to take a deep breath for a few months and get ready come the fall to build for November of 2020 because it's all on the line. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, your support, your trust, and I'm honored to be here as always. Yes, sir.
We thank you for blessing us tonight. We're gonna make America great again. It's gonna be like Texas. So this says make
Oh, I love that. I love that. Make America like Texas. I want to tell you something about the president. The president genuinely loves Texas more than any place on the planet. His sons have been coming here, Don Jr. and Eric, for years hunting. The president, by the way, we raised in Texas more money for him in 2016 than California and New York combined. We were his main engine to raise money and will be again. But he comes here a lot. He did so much for us in the storm relief. Like I said, he gave us a 90-10 match. He's just done a terrific job. He understands what's on the line in 2020. He came into that rally. I asked his team in July last year before the election. I said, I need the president to come to Texas. Because I knew the races were going to be closer than I didn't know the turnout was going to be that high, but I knew they were going to be close. And I think his rally in Houston that night, in Ted Cruz winning that election, and Ted worked hard, but I tell you what, Donald Trump, that 200,000 votes, and this is a scary number for you. So Montgomery County, like Tarrant County, strong conservative stronghold, they were the only county that really didn't see a drop. They didn't see an increase in Republican. They didn't see an increase in Democrat voters. You didn't have a decrease in Republican. You just had more Democrats. Ted Cruz won Montgomery County by almost 100,000 votes, which was right in the listening area of that rally that night in the early vote. Think of that. 100,000 votes in one county only won the rest of the state by 100 total. So that rally was huge, and the president came here. His team didn't want him to come here, and I'll tell you how it happened. I finally called Rick Perry, who's a great ally for us up there, and I said, I need the president to come. Will you just be sure he gets the message? And Rick Perry called back about an hour and a half later. He says he'll be there. And he came in and it was a difference maker for us and saved us a lot of seats. Maybe saved us the house because it just inspired some more people to get out. And so we are lucky to have a guy that loves Texas. And when I talked to the media, he said, what about Donald Trump? I said, Texas loves Donald Trump. All right, thank you all for that.